Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to be focusing on ring text marking. So that's going to be on the inside and the outside using our Nano Engraver or Eco Engraver. So to start out our project, we're going to open up our master engraving file. Now, if you don't have this or know where to find it, please go into the first video and watch how to get to this. Let's open that file. Now, once it's opened, we're going to go into, this is at the top, so laser, and there's a lot of options here, but the one that we're going to focus on is ring text mark. Okay, and this is where this new dialog box is going to open up. Now, this is a little different than the standard marking operation, where we mark on just a flat surface. This is where we're going to do our red and our marking from this dialog box. If we don't, then the laser is not going to know to rotate the clamp, and it's going to just engrave as though it's a flat surface. So what we're going to be doing here is measuring our ring diameter. So this is where a caliper is going to come into play. And then I'm going to put my caliper in millimeters. To get that, as I kind of slide it back and forth on the jaws, and it should freely pass through with just a little bit of resistance. And so for this particular ring, I'm measuring 21.3 millimeters. And so we can move that back over to our computer and input that. So in our ring diameter, we're going to measure 21.3 millimeters. And then our height, that is determined by how thick is probably not the right word, but how tall. So from the top here to the bottom. So I guess how wide the ring is. So I'm going to take that measurement. Okay, so that's looking great. So that's measuring at 3.16 here. So for ring height, we're going to put 3.16. Perfect. Now, if we're measuring on the outside, we are basically ready. Now, for marking on the inside, which we're going to do later, we're going to pay attention to this ring inside. So for this case, we want to make sure that this is unchecked for this process. So I can hit refresh, and moving this dialog box, you'll notice that our workspace dramatically changed in size. This is as though we cut the ring and flattened it out onto a flat surface. So now we know this is the area that we're going to be working with. So this is the very edge of the ring, top and bottom, and then left and right. And each edge is where it connects. So I'm going to hit quit for now because we need to put some text in here. So let me undo some of this stuff here. So let's say I wanted to do some sort of an event. So we'll say Sunstone 10 years achievement, right? But maybe it's just 10 years, just for being concise. So if we go over to our fonts, we can just choose whatever font that we want. The list of fonts is any font that you have installed on your computer. So in this case, let's do something a little bit more atypical. Sure, let's do this one. And I said 10 years at Sunstone as an achievement for the ring. And so you can see that's very large. So what I want to do is I would say my text size, because I know that this ring is 3.16 high, I'm going to actually put that as 2.5 as my height. And then while selecting the arrow on the top of this panel here, we can put that to origin, which will be putting it in the center. And if we go to this zoom all on our magnifying list here, it'll zoom into our lettering system here. Now, if we don't like this, we can simply just change the font, right? Let's say I like this one better, this stencil. Again, I'm going to center it because the height of different letters are different. And then I'm going to want to hatch this so I can more easily read it. So while selecting the text in my objects list or highlighting it on my workspace, I'm going to hit the H for hatch, and then I'm going to hatch 1 be my cutting hatch. So in this example, I'm using steel. So if I reference my list here on the right, number 6 is my steel option. And I always like running a cleaning pass, which is our pen 11. And if we have it in a different order, then we can always reference it over here. So I have all these checkboxes marked, minus the mark contour. So this following etch once does it before, mark contour does it after, just as a reference. So let's hit OK. And you'll notice that the lettering is blue. So the color is based off of whatever it does last. So in a lot of instances when we're working on just outlines, we select here and apply that to the object here. But if we're hatching, it's just going to follow whatever the hatching settings are going to be. And you can see, well, what about all these little dots that are all over the screen? That's normal, because as we zoom in, we'll see that all that cross hatch that we put on looks perfect and fine. So we're going to zoom out, and you'll see once I zoom out, that looks a lot cleaner. So we're going to place this ring back onto the ring clamp and continue this process. So we'll get that lined up. And if you have a ring that has a diamond, so I cut this and made a mark. So let's say that's our diamond right there. If it's a wedding band or something, a class ring, we'll want to have that on the opposite side if we're going to engrave on the outside, so we don't interfere with that. So we're going to slide that on, use this gnarled piece to kind of tighten that up so it can't come off. Again, making sure it's even across all those pegs. And then secondly, we're going to want to make sure our laser is in focus, because you can see if it's not, we're going to have issues. So I'm going to raise that up in this case. We're going to watch that laser travel until it's right over the top of our previous laser that's coming out of the optics. And if we're having a hard time seeing the difference, we can toggle those on and off. And that looks a little off, so let's turn it back on. And to the naked eye, that's a lot better. So now that that's in place, then we're going to go back into our laser on the top hand side where we started this tutorial. And we're going to do ring text mark. Again, it's going to remember what we put in before. And then we can do red. Now you'll notice that as we're going through, it rotated our ring. And it's going to go to the very first letter that we gave it. So S in this example. I can then hit next and see what it's going to look like for each letter. So just like before on a flat surface, we can double check our work before we even get started. And this is particularly helpful if it's a diamond ring or something that's irreplaceable. So we can go through each letter And then once we get to 0, 0 is our S. So we can go through and toggle back and forth as fast as we want. And then if we need to make any adjustments to the ring, we can do that. If it's easier to see, because some of these letters are super small, you can turn off one of the lasers that acts as the center focus or the offset so that you can see the letter outlined a little clearer. So again, going through each one of these. So after reviewing it multiple times, I'm like, this is really, especially the Y, it's too tall. So I'm going to select my font again. And I'm going to say I need this actually to be 2.25 instead. And then we can go into Laser, Ring Text Mark again, go to red, and just double check that. And see, that is a lot better. So we're going to go over to our Y. All right, I am more satisfied with how that looks. So we're going to hit cancel. It's going to revert back to the center. And now that I feel good about that, we're going to hit mark. And it's going to run the entire program. You'll notice that it's doing the cutting and cleaning for each letter. Okay, now this is something critically important. As soon as we pull this ring off of the clamp, we are committed to that design. If we need to remark it, we have that choice now. If we need to preview it and look at all the letters, I like using the red function and toggling through all of my letters. And what I do is I actually turn off both red lasers so I can see how well it engraved. And let's say that I'm happy with that. Then I can pull that off. If I'm not, and I say, you know what, I would like it to be deeper, I can actually run that program one more time and achieve a deeper engraving. Now with stainless steel, this is going to be less clean than you would see on a gold ring, a silver ring, or otherwise. This just happens to be one of those demo rings that I have here in the lab. And there's other settings that we can play around with when we go into a more in-depth view of the settings. If you need to watch that video, please look at the playlist as it will be appropriately marked. So let's say we're happy with our design. We can hit quit, and then we can pull that out. So in the instance that we want this on the inside of the ring rather than the outside, we're going to get our caliper again. Instead of measuring the outside of the ring, we're going to measure the inside of the ring. So measuring it from the opposite side of the caliper, as you saw, I actually grabbed a number. Let's see, let's go to ring text mark so that we can input that. So in ring diameter, instead of 21.3, I got 17.45. And then ring height hasn't changed. And so now we can hit refresh. So now you can see the width of that workspace shrunk down quite a bit. And so let's say, for the sake of this tutorial, we are also happy with the height of this text while it is in the inside. So let me replace that ring and then we can get started. So when we are going to place the ring for an inside engraving, we're going to want to open the jaws open all of the way, and then we're going to place that ring so it grips from the outside. So while turning on both of these laser pointers, we're having a problem because it is actually pointing on the outside still. So on the right hand side of that ring clamp, we have a knob, and we can loosen that, and then we can angle our ring so that we can access the inside of that ring. So we want the starting point to be on the bottom side here. In this case, I'm at 10 degrees. I'm going to tighten that up. And so you can see both laser dots on there. So I'm going to lower. And if I need to shift my clamp by loosening that nut on the right side, I can do that as well. But just like we did before, we want to have both of those right on top of each other. And I'm going to make sure that the center of that dot is right in the center of my ring, just so that my work is lined up properly. So following those same steps, I'm going to toggle that laser on and off, and that looks like it's right on top of each other. Okay, so moving over to our laser engraver, we're going to follow the same steps, but with the exception is we're going to have ring inside checked off. Now I'm going to uncheck this just so that you can see. So when you go to red, you'll notice that it's going to write the letters backwards. So the rotation is counterclockwise. So let me hit cancel on that. So I'm going to mark ring inside instead. And now you'll notice that the ring clamp is now rotating clockwise. And so we can follow the same principles that we did for marking on the outside and go through our entire word. Now we are ready to mark. And you'll notice that it's rotating clockwise now to mark on the inside. And again, if we want to mark that a second time, we can do so if we want to achieve higher depth. Now, what I've noticed with rings is sometimes you want less depth if it's on the inside because you want the customer to not feel it but be able to read it. So based off of what the needs are, you can make that choice. In this case, I'm going to be happy.